Hello, I'm Gary Quinn, and welcome to another episode of Ready, Set, Live. My guest today is Beverly Hills interior designer Jonathan Barnett. With origins in South Africa and Great Britain, his diverse background has impacted his knowledge and his innate eye for his form, function, and design. Some of his clients include the Osbournes, Rob and Cheryl Lowe, Sally Field, and Jane Seymour. He has been seen in Architectural Digest, House and Garden, Angelino Magazine, and the LA Times. Don't go away. I'll be right back with Jonathan Barnett. Hello, Jonathan. Thank you for coming to the show today.
Hello, Gary.
Your design work has always been very spot on in just sort of showing people sleek, but really having an eye. What was your inspiration for getting into the design business? I know you started in Great Britain and South Africa. How did it all unfold?
In South Africa, I worked on weekends when I was out of school in an interior design showroom. And there were two interior designers in South Africa. They brought all the Italian contemporary lines to South Africa. And so my first knowledge of design was really contemporary. Spending a lot of time in England, I would also be, tutored in English antiques and French antiques, but my love was always contemporary.
Did you find that growing up you had an innate connection for Los Angeles, or was it more it brought you here based on your design or your work?
Growing up, I was always in love with movies. Mm-hmm. We had TV at a very late stage in South Africa. I think it was 72 or 73. But I loved movies, and all my walls were Hollywood celebrities growing up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because over the years of speaking to people, interviewing them, their past connection of putting up intentions that they wanted to do something, most of them have all come true. Mm-hmm. So that being said, what was your first client coming to Los Angeles, and how did you, figure out what it is that you wanted to bring to that person's life or show a piece of themselves in the design that you wanted to do for them?
Yeah, my first client, I was working in a showroom on Robertson Boulevard, earning nothing, and trying to get my green card, trying to get my work papers, and I still had a real love for theater, because that's what I'd grown up in, music and in theater. I studied theater in England, so I came here with that desire. But something led me to work in an interior design showroom. After about 5 or 6 months, this woman came in one day, and I started guiding her with fabrics and styles, and she said to me, "You have a great eye." And we started working together through the showroom. Mm-hmm. I was ready to leave and go back to South Africa because I wasn't earning very much. And she said to me, "Don't rush into doing that." And she also introduced me into what people loved in those days, which was country French and country English. She was a great ballerina in the late 40s. Her name was Nora Kay. Mm-hmm. And she was married to Herbert Ross, who did Funny Girl, Funny Lady, Turning Point, all those films. So she introduced me to a lot of people in the industry. About a week before I decided to leave, the phone rang, and she said to me, "I've referred you to Sally Field, and she wants to redo her whole home. And would you meet with her?" And I met with Sally. She was at 20th, I believe, in those days, doing a film. And I had no portfolio. I walked in, we sat on the floor and looked through magazines and spoke, and she said to me, "You hired." And what was crazy to me is I went back to my car, and the whole cast of MASH in costume were coming out of their trailer. And I was like, this feels like a fantasy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she was your first client. When you look at a person's home now, or let's say it's a custom design, what is it that how do you tune in? What do you sense of the client, or is it what she wants or he wants and you sort of build around it? Or is there an innate intuitive vibe that you use to kind of feel like, I think she would like that, he would like this?
Right. I think for me what's very important is every home has a soul. So architecturally I have to respect what's there. I can't deviate too far to the left or the right. I try to keep to the soul of the home, and then I interpret through my expertise what their needs are and guide them in a direction of more of using monotones with little accents of color so it stays very timeless. 10, 20 years from now, it still looks very current.
Do you find in just your daily routine, what's your ritual? Because I know working in any business, one could find themselves stressed out or overtired or overworked. What would be what's your rhythm of are you doing a meditation, yoga? What is it that keeps Jonathan fit?
I always return to the teachings that I learned at a very early age of Yogananda, excuse me, and transcendental meditation. So I incorporate those every morning when I awake. I make my bed, which people say you should always do, and then I sit quietly, do some prayer, and I incorporate breath work. And mostly TM, where I introduce a mantra, and the mantra takes me down to being very quiet. Then I'm non-reactive through the day.
Can you describe one of your greatest challenges that you've had to overcome, or that you had a breakthrough growing up, or just somewhere in your life?
I grew up in South Africa, which was very segregated. In the 50s and 60s, I was born in the late 50s and grew up in the 60s, where you couldn't really speak about what you saw. Mm-hmm. At the age of 13, my mom sent me to her sister in England, and I saw another way of life. She took me to Carnaby Street and all over London, and I went, this is where I want to live. I came back to South Africa from the age of 13, or even earlier. I was never ever happy being there. I saw terrible things happen, and it just upset me, and I couldn't keep quiet. I wasn't that type of a child that would keep quiet. And eventually, when I did make the trip and left and went to live in England first, I felt like I could breathe again and come alive to who I truly was.
Interesting. What is, I know a lot of people are going through many things in their life during this last 3-year period. And I think it's about a mirrored image of they have to look at themselves. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them have not found that they're very happy in their situation. What do you think the core is for people not being happy, or what is it that really sets them apart of why people in general are not happy?
I think they're looking on the outside for the answers, and the answers have always been on the inside. I think you can go back to the beginning of time, and all the true masters and teachers, there's the same message over and over again, that we have a universe within ourselves. And when you quiet the mind enough, the door opens so you can see it, and you stop looking externally for gratification, materialization. I'm not saying one shouldn't have these things, but when they rule your life, you lose a sense and an understanding of who you are, why we're here. And I always have felt that there is a life after this. I've always, I think since a little boy, and then it, was confirmed in my spirituality and studies. And I think that we get lost in the illusion the Maya of life. And it's always, when you come back to your center, which is the breath lives in the present. It doesn't live in the future or the past. And when we center ourselves and come back to our breath, everything settles, and everything through being quiet is revealed.
Who has influenced your life? Who's been the most inspirational person or teacher that's inspired you?
I feel that Gandhi, Yogananda, I feel most of the Indian teachers, in fact, the Indian masters have always inspired me. I have an understanding when I read their books, Krishnamurti, Thich Nhat Hanh. There's something that happened when I open those books. I have an understanding of what I'm reading. Even when I read the Bhagavad Gita for the first time, I seemed to understand everything it was saying.
Have you been to India?
No.
Interesting.
No, I'd love to go to India.
It would be, I've never been either. It would be interesting to see the connection, because many times when you have such a deep connection to a certain culture, you might have this, I've been here before. It feels like home.
No, absolutely. In fact, when Indian teachers used to come to Los Angeles, not but for some reason, I would be drawn to them. The next thing, I'd be in their home, they'd be feeding me, and there was always this deep connection. I was initiated into my third eye when I was 13, and at that age, I really wanted to go to India because my father's brother followed a teacher who was called Maharaji in those days, and I was ready to go. My parents were like, you're not going to India, and just forget about that at 13 years old.
That's funny. No, I have the same with India. In fact, I had an Indian master here. She is quite well known in India. Her and her husband, they have a center called Ekam.
Yes.
And I had done an event in Sun Valley, Idaho, and we didn't get to connect. And I wanted to have her on the show, and she lives in India. And my translator in Japan goes there and brings Japanese students there. So I'm on the plane from Sun Valley to Salt Lake City, and I'm sitting, and she and her group, posse, come up, and she goes, the woman says, "Can I have that seat? Can you switch?" And I go, "Oh my God, I wanted to meet you, Sri Pathana, I believe her name is." And I said, "No problem." So during the flight, I said, "Would you be able to come?" She says, "I'm going to be in LA next week." And she was able to come, and she did the show. And lovely woman, and I still keep in touch with her on WhatsApp. But there was an instant connection, and I didn't have to do anything.
Right.
It was like that flow that you just being in their energy.
Yeah.
What inspires you musically? What gets you? Is it classical? Is it jazz? Is it what gets you? Let you just relax and listen to?
Yeah, I listen to
Indian music. Bollywood.
I love chanting. I studied Kundalini yoga for many years, and I loved the chanting. And people used to say to me, "You really should be singing with your bass baritone voice." And so I put on Snatam Kaur. I don't know if you know. She's amazing, and I put her on in the morning and sing along with her. But I grew up loving jazz. I met Sarah Vaughan and George Duke, and I loved jazz growing up. And I grew up in theatre, which was, Rodgers and Hammerstein and all those kind of musicals I grew up loving. And then Led Zeppelin, and from Led Zeppelin to Shirley Bassey, there was a whole
group,
smorgasbord of singers that I loved, and types of music.
If someone was going to play you in a movie, who would you choose to play Jonathan? Actor.
It's interesting. When I came to live in Los Angeles, they used to think I was a younger brother of David Carradine. And I would go to some restaurants and they go, come in, and the meal's on us. I was like, I didn't want to say anything. I was like, whoever they think I am, it's just fine. There was a restaurant called the Daisy on Rodeo, and they used to comp my meal every time I went in there. I didn't want to blow my cover. But then somebody said to me one day, they think you like the younger Carradine.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, I have a friend. She lives in Paris now. She used to live here, and she was a dead ringer back then for Jamie Lee Curtis when they were younger. So if she wore sunglasses, we'd go into a restaurant and the same thing. Oh, please sit down. And they'd send us a plate of hors d'oeuvres free. Oh, on the house. But it's really interesting. There's always a table available.
Yes.
The other thing is, would you say, what's the bucket list for you now? Is there someone you would love to work with or design? Who would be that person or meet that you would say, I would just love to spend time with this person and design something for them?
Without naming people, I mean, I'd love to work with Elon Musk because I've worked with some of his partners and he's South African. So I would love that connection, and I find him so intelligent, and I feel we're kind of on the same page, if I can say that. Elon Musk would be great. I've worked, and many years ago, I had a connection to meet Oprah through her pilot, and that didn't work out. So Oprah would be great. I worked a lot in Montecito and was introduced to a lot of people by Rob Lowe's wife, Cheryl. And I've worked with a lot of great people. I think for me, most important now is that working with people that are kind, that are not caught up with the ego.
Yes.
Because it just makes my service so much easier. And then I want to give more of myself, when there's no drama and unnecessary stuff.
Exactly. I think the days of drama just don't work anymore.
No.
What would you say as far as how would you enjoy to spend a vacation? What's your idea of a relaxing vacation?
Probably Africa, but not South Africa, like Botswana. Being on a canoe and going out into the veld. I love that. My soul has a very deep connection with Africa. Not so the personality of the country, but the soul of the country. Every time I would leave, I would go visit my parents and leave, I would cry in the plane. And I realized it wasn't just crying because I was leaving my parents. It was crying because part of my soul is in that country, is in that land. Africa's amazing. So that's where I find in Australia as well. Being in Australia, I love. I'm going to Australia for my birthday, and it has a similarity to me of Africa.
I love Australia.
Yeah.
Well, I've only been to Sydney, but I had a book tour there in 2002, and it was just brilliant. I love the people, the energy, and are you going to just stay in one area?
No, I'm going to Sydney to start, and then my cousins have just built a home in Noosa, and then I'm going to Melbourne after that, and then I'll come home.
Nice.
It's good to give myself the time. I don't always do that, and it's a default because I'm always in service to the clients, and everybody goes off to Europe for summer. And I'm always just working, so it's time for me to take time.
Nice. When will that trip start?
On the 3rd of October.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, so quick questions.
Yeah.
Love means, what is love? Love is?
Love is seeing your reflection in somebody else, and it's returned to you what you are sharing with someone.
Heaven is?
Heaven is living in the wisdom of our heart.
What does the soul mean to you?
The soul, to me, is who we are. The soul is here on a physical journey. It's not becoming spiritual or metaphysical. We are the soul.
If you were granted one wish for humanity or for our planet, what would it be?
That everybody awakens to love.
Nice. If you could go back into history or time and ask one question from anyone, who would you want to meet and what question would you ask?
I would probably like to meet Jesus. I'd like to ask how this all began. Why are we here? What is after this? How many other lives have we lived? And how many other species are there in the galaxies?
Love it. When you also set out to design something, spiritually speaking, do you do, you're definitely in some kind of creative mode, but do you lay things out, or do you just sort of have a book, a master table that you put, like an artist, canvas with paints? How do you start your once you sign the client? How does the show start?
It's usually presented to me. Once I walk through the home, I'll always look at finding one thing that sets everything in motion, and it usually presents itself to me within a matter of 4 or 5 days, be it a style of a chair or a chandelier or a fireplace, whatever it is. Through all my work, it has always presented itself to me.
What makes Jonathan laugh?
A lot, actually. Realizing that none of this is really serious.
On a plane, aisle or window?
Window.
Cool. So you've got many projects in the works, and people can go to your Instagram at Jonathan Barnett Design. I thank you so much for coming in studio today, and you are changing people's lives with your work.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
Yes. All right. Thank you for coming on the show today. And I'm Gary Quinn. Join me for another episode of Ready, Set, Live. Until next time, be well.